You're sitting in an exquisite restaurant in the summer of 1853. The air is thick with the smell of fried oil and a fresh breeze from Saratoga Lake. Before you is a plate of French fries. You send them back. Again. Too thick. Too soft. Not right. You're a regular at Moon's Lake House. You're accustomed to obedience. But today the kitchen is silent longer than usual. On the other side of the swinging doors is George Crum, hands calloused, teeth clenched, fingers trembling. He's already sliced your potatoes 3 times. 3 times you've rejected them. Now he stares at the potato and thinks, fine, you want thin? You'll get paper thin. The blade glides. The potato turns into translucent slivers, less than a millimeter thick. He throws them into boiling oil, not with hope, but with defiance. Let's see him send these back. Is it you who comes out? Or is it still him? Are you familiar with that crunch? The one that makes your brain light up like a neon sign above a diner? It's not just a sound. It's a signal. An ancient code. Crunch equals freshness. Crunch equals safety. Limp food is dangerous. Crispy food is alive. Crum didn't know this. He was just angry. But his revenge hit an evolutionary trigger dead on. And that's where the real story begins. A week later, all of Saratoga Springs is buzzing about Saratoga chips. A year later, they're sold in sealed tin cans. 10 years later, trains carry them across America. By the 1960s, chips are the second most popular food product after bread. Today it's a $40 billion industry annually, all because of one slice cut in anger. Imagine, you're munching on a bag in the subway. Your hands smell of salt. The bag rustles like a secret. And in your head there's no thought, just the crunch. Do you think it's just a snack? No. It's an archive of resentment, encrypted in fat and salt. But who truly was the first to place these slices on a plate? Legend says Crum. Documents hint at his sister Catherine. She worked in the kitchen. She packed the chips for guests. She vanished from history like a translucent sliver in hot oil. Look here. Your next bag of chips isn't food. It's a message from the past. From a chef who wanted to punish. From a woman who was erased. From billions who can't stop at just one. And it all started with one question. Can you make them thinner? George Crum stood by the stove. Hands calloused, teeth clenched. Do you hear the wooden cutting board creaking under his palm? It's not just a board. It's a block. The potato, his victim. The customer beyond the wall, the executioner. Too thick again, for the 4th time. Crum doesn't respond. He slices, not into pieces, into sheets, into whispers, 0.8 of a millimeter thick, almost transparent, like onion skin, like paper for a love letter. He throws them into the oil, not at 320 degrees, not immediately. First, a gentle simmer, drying, then a flash, 375 degrees. The oil hisses like a snake sensing blood. The slices ignite. They don't burn. They crystallize. The crunch isn't born in your teeth. It's born in the oil. Have you ever held a chip that breaks with a breath? This is it. The first one, made not for pleasure, for reproach. Try sending this back, Crum thinks, and he serves it, not on a plate, as a challenge. But the customer doesn't grimace. He crunches loudly, with delight. Neighbors turn around. Who is this? What are they eating? A day later, 2 order them. 3 days later, 5. Crum's potatoes. No description, no menu. By rumor, by sound. Imagine, in 1853, thin potatoes were a disgrace. A chef who cut them that way would lose his job. But Crum, he raises the price by 25%. And everyone pays. No haggling, no questions. Why? Because crunch isn't just a sound. It's proof. Proof that the food is alive. That it hasn't sat in sauce for an hour. Hasn't dried out in a pot. It just came from the fire and wants to die on your tongue. Do your fingers remember this? When you tear open a bag and salt sticks to your skin, it's not marketing. It's an echo. An echo of Moon's Lake House kitchen. An echo of anger transformed into a ritual. But here's what no one asks. Why did crunch specifically hook the brain? Not taste, not smell, sound. Neuroscientists today know, when you hear a crunch, your brain gives the green light. Fresh, safe, eat. It's an ancient code, older than restaurants, older than potatoes in America. Crum didn't know this. He just wanted the customer to shut up. And it worked. Forever. Look here. Every time you can't stop at one chip, you're not weak. You're responding to a signal sent from the past, from a kitchen where revenge became a menu, where resentment became a crunch. And that crunch still sounds louder than any order. Imagine, you're seated at a table at Moon's Lake House. Beside you, two guests in dusty coats. They've just arrived from Albany. One leans toward the waiter and whispers, "What's that crunching behind him?" The waiter smiles, doesn't answer, just places a plate on their table. On it are golden slices, thinner than a petal. On top, a porcelain salt shaker. Have you ever seen salt fall on crispy potatoes? The crystals flash like sparks. The first bite, and the guest's face freezes. Not from the taste, from the sound. 70 decibels of crunch, like a step on dry autumn leaves, like the first ice on a pond underfoot. The brain instantly whispers, fresh, clean, alive. Do you hear it? It's not food. It's a survival signal. Crum didn't know about neuroscience, but he felt it. Crunch is a language the body speaks, and the body always tells the truth. A week later, the restaurant had no empty seats. A month later, guests arrived by steamboat. They didn't ask for potatoes. They asked for that crunch. And now look at the salt shaker, small, white, with a blue rim. In 1854, this was madness. Salt, not in the kitchen, not at the chef's discretion, but here, right in front of you. You decide a little, a lot, until it burns your tongue. It's not seasoning, it's power. And Crum gave it to you, in exchange for your delight. Do you know that feeling? When you tear open a bag of chips and the first thing you do is pour salt into your palm? It's not a habit, it's memory. The body's memory of the day when food first gave you a choice. But here's the paradox. The thinner the slice, the louder the crunch. The more fragile, the stronger the signal. Crum didn't cut the potatoes for pleasure, for humiliation. But he received adoration, because he turned resentment into texture, texture into sound, sound into addiction. And all this because of one salt shaker on a plate, because of one slice that breaks at a glance, because of one guest who didn't know that his whim would start a ritual for billions. Remember this moment the next time you hear a crunch. You're not eating a snack. You're participating in an ancient ritual where freshness is God and salt is its sacrifice. Saratoga Springs in 1901. Steamboats disappear into the fog. On deck, ladies in hats, gentlemen with canes, and in every hand, a tin can with a crest. Inside, crunch, packaged like a jewel. Do you hear the tin rattling in the suitcase? It's not food. It's a souvenir. Proof that you were there, where the taste of the future was born. Crum no longer works at Moon's Lake House. He opened his own restaurant, Crum's Woodland House. But no one goes there for chips. They go for the myth, and the myth has already slipped from his hands. Have you ever given a gift, not knowing it would become a cult? That's how, in wax paper, tied with ribbon, his revenge traveled to New York, Chicago, San Francisco. And then, boom, 1920. Wax paper. Chips don't get stale, don't break, they live. 1950. Polyethylene. Nitrogen instead of air. Crunch trapped. Forever fresh. 1960. Supermarkets. Shelves. Bright bags. Chips. The second product after bread. 300 factories. None with Crum's name. Imagine, you stand at the counter, choosing between Lay's and Pringles. And your choice, an echo of a chef's anger, who died in 1909, without a patent, without a dime. His restaurant, ruins. His name, a legend on a package no one reads. Do you know that feeling? When your best idea becomes someone else's business? Crum didn't sell the recipe, didn't sue, he just went to the lake. And watched the world chew on his resentment. 300 factories, billions of dollars, zero profit for him. And now the question, who actually was the first to wrap chips in paper? Not the one who cut them, but the one who packaged them. Because in America, the inventor doesn't win. The packager wins. But what if even the packager wasn't first? What if behind this story, there's another hand, quieter, a woman's, up to her elbows in flour, no name in the newspapers, with a history erased, like salt from fingers? Look here, you think you're eating chips, but in reality, you're unearthing the archaeology of injustice. Every bite, a question. Whose glory? Whose shadow? And as you tear open the bag, somewhere in the archives, dust covers a name that should have been on every package, but wasn't. Quiet. Listen. In 1924, long after George Crum had been buried, his sister Catherine Wicks sat on a porch in Saratoga. She was 82, her hands calloused from the knife she'd held back in '53, and she told a newspaper, "I invented the chips." Not him. Me. Do you hear that voice? Quiet. Weary. With no claim to a monument. Just the truth, exhaled into the dusty notebook of a reporter who probably didn't even believe it. For the legend already lived its own life. The hot-tempered chef, potato revenge, the crunch as a challenge. Drama. And drama demands a hero with a beard and anger. Not a woman in an apron, silently peeling potatoes in the corner of a kitchen. Imagine, you are Catherine. You stand by the stove. The customer whines again. Too thick. You sigh. You pick up the knife. And you slice, not into pieces but into sheets. So thin he chokes on. His own pickiness. You're not thinking of fame. You're thinking, let him choke. And then your brother carries it out on a plate, and the whole world decides it's his genius. Do you know that feeling? When your idea is taken by a man, and he gets the applause for it. Archives confirm, Catherine did work in the Moon's Lake House kitchen, not as a cook, as an assistant. In the 19th century, that word erased everything, your labor, your ingenuity, your name. Oral family accounts, recorded in the 1980s, repeat one thing. Aunt Kathy always said, it was her joke. But history doesn't listen to jokes from women. It listens to drama from men. Look here. Catherine's hands are the hands of 1,000 others. Those whose recipes, formulas, discoveries went into men's patents, books, legends. She didn't sue. She didn't write memoirs. She just lived and waited for the truth to emerge from the dust on its own. And here it is. It emerged. But even now, when we know that it was possibly a woman who created the crispiest product in history, we still call them Crum's chips. Why? Because myth is more convenient than truth. Myth doesn't require rewriting textbooks, doesn't force brands to change logos, doesn't disturb habit. Your bag of chips isn't just a snack, it's an artifact of inequality, packaged in nitrogen. And yet, regardless of who first picked up the knife, George or Catherine, without technology, this revenge would have died in the kitchen, like thousands of others. But industry picked up the crunch and turned it into a machine. How? More on that next. Summer of 1853. The heat presses down on Saratoga Springs like a cast-iron skillet on a stove. In the kitchen of Moon's Lake House, George Crum picks up a knife, not for cooking, for an answer. The potato under the blade turns into petals, thinner than paper, fragile as resentment. He doesn't know he's making history. He thinks he's spoiling dinner. Oil boils at 375 degrees. The slices fall, and the crunch sounds for the first time. Resonant, sadistic, damnably satisfying. Do you hear that sound? 70 decibels of pure pleasure. The brain instantly gives the green light. Fresh. Safe. Eat. Crum didn't know about neurobiology. He was just angry. But his anger hit an ancient code dead on. Imagine, you're in a kitchen in 1910, hands covered in flour. Beside you, the first potato slicing machine. Steel, gears, precision down to 0.5 millimeter. No chef needed any more. Revenge, packaged in a mechanism. The conveyor belt chews tubers as if anger were raw material. Double frying, vacuum, nitrogen instead of air. The crunch is now eternal, like debt, Do you know that feeling? When something born of rage becomes a habit? 10,000 bags per second, 600,000 per minute, 36 million per hour. By 2025, the chip market, $40 billion. All because of one cut, one sigh of irritation, one customer who said, "Too thick." Machines don't remember grudges. They just repeat. Precisely. Without error. Without trembling fingers. Without a sister in the corner of the kitchen, silently wrapping slices in wax paper. Technology erased names. Left only the crunch. But in every slice, that same heat still trembles. That same defiance. Look here. Your bag isn't food. It's an archive of emotion packaged into a system. You're not just chewing. You're participating in a transformation, how personal rage became a global ritual. Why? Because the brain loves a surprise. Because crunch is the body's language. Because even revenge can be delicious, if you slice it thin enough. And yet, when you tear open the bag, your fingers don't remember the machine. They remember hands. Hands that trembled with anger. Hands that were silent in the shadows. Hands that gave the world an addiction to crunch. Do you think you're choosing a taste? No. You're responding to a signal, sent from the past, through fat, through salt, through a millimeter of potato, sliced in anger. George Crum throws the knife onto the board. He's sure this is a failure. Who would eat potatoes that break at a touch? He expects a burst of anger, the plate returned, new humiliation, but instead, silence, and then applause. The customer not only didn't return the dish, he asked for more. And he wasn't the only one. Suddenly the whole room demands those thin potatoes. Crum stands in the kitchen smoke and doesn't understand. His revenge has become a triumph. His anger, a delicacy. His resentment, the beginning of a legend. At this moment, he isn't inventing a snack. He accidentally creates a mirror for all humanity. We love what is born of emotion, especially when it crunches. Imagine, you're in his shoes. You do something out of anger, and suddenly the world says, more. Do you know that feeling? When your failure becomes someone else's delight? Why did failure become success? Because chips aren't just food, they're a sensory paradox. We expect softness from potatoes, but we get crunch. We're used to a dense texture, but we encounter fragility. At this moment, the brain thinks, wait, there's something new here. And dopamine floods, like for something sweet, like for a victory, like for a first kiss. Crunch isn't a sound, it's a reward, and it works even if you don't know why. Have you ever noticed? The thinner the chip, the harder it is to stop. It's not weakness. It's your nervous system celebrating a broken pattern. And now, look broader. Penicillin was born from a moldy petri dish. The microwave, from melted chocolate in a pocket. Post-it notes, from adhesive that didn't stick. Great discoveries rarely come as planned. They burst through a door you wanted to shut. Chips are the same story. Crum wasn't looking for a revolution. He just wanted the customer to shut up. And the world responded with a crunch. Do you know that moment when an error suddenly becomes a breakthrough? We don't just eat potatoes. We eat emotions. We eat history. We eat the crunch of resentment turned into joy. And perhaps that's why chips are so close to each of us, even those who have never heard the name George Crum. Because in each of us lives a chef who once wanted to take revenge on the world, but instead gave it something beautiful and crunchy. Remember this moment, your next bag of chips isn't a snack. It's an archaeological layer of serendipity, where anger became genius and failure a reward. And all this, because someone once asked, can you make them thinner? Today, Subway. The bag tears in your hands. The crunch, like a shot in the quiet car. You don't think about Saratoga. You don't know that potatoes were once thick as a finger. You don't remember that. Salt used to not be added by yourself, the chef decided. And now you are the master of taste. You choose a little, a lot, until it burns your tongue. It's a ritual, started in 1853, when salt was first placed directly on the plate with crispy potatoes, not in sauce, not in a pan, but here, in front of you, as a challenge, as trust, as power. Do you know that movement? When your fingers reach for the bag themselves, even before your brain says hungry? It's not weakness. It's body memory. Memory of that day when food first responded to resentment, not with words, but with texture. But is it true that Crum invented chips? Archives are silent, or they whisper other names. His sister Catherine claimed it was her revenge. European cookbooks described crispy potatoes decades before Saratoga. But who believes a dry fact when there's drama? Myth is stronger, because myth is a mirror. In it you see yourself, someone who once got so angry that they created something beautiful. Imagine a conveyor belt in the factory. Potatoes fall into water. Steel blades cut them into millimeter-thin petals. Not a single hand, not a single breath, not a drop of anger. And yet, the crunch is the same. Why? Because brands don't sell potatoes. They sell a legend, the image of a chef in an apron, who in a fit of rage sliced revenge paper-thin. Even if that chef is fictional, even if his kitchen is CGI in an advertisement. Do you hear the irony? Crum got no cents, no patent, no mention on the packaging, and his anger is sold for $40 billion a year. Lay's, Pringles, Doritos, they all trade on the same emotion, impulse, resentment, accidental genius, like 78% of inventors whose names have been erased, but whose ideas are in every home. Look here, your next bag isn't food, it's a relic. You're not just chewing, you're participating in a myth where resentment became crunch, and crunch, the language spoken by all humanity. Because sometimes the greatest legacy is what you didn't even notice you left to the world. You just picked up a knife and sliced thinner than they asked. Let's piece this story together. It all started with a conflict. A customer complains, a chef gets angry. Crum takes a knife, not for cooking, but for an answer. He slices potatoes thinner than ever, less than 1 millimeter against the usual 1 to 2 centimeters. He throws them into oil not with hope, but with defiance. And instead of failure, delight. The room is silent. Then it crunches, loudly. A week later, a line for the steamboat. A year later, cans with a crest. A decade later, factories. By 2025, $40 billion a year. The chain is simple: resentment, crunch, billions. But behind this simplicity, a deep truth. Innovations aren't born in laboratories. They burst out of kitchens where someone, in a fit of pique, said, "All right, if that's how you want it, you'll get it." Imagine George Crum leaves Moon's lake house, opens Crum's woodland house. On the plates, his revenge. Beside it, a salt shaker. Not in sauce, not at the chef's discretion, but right in front of you. You decide, a little, a lot, until it burns. It's not seasoning, it's trust. He lives a long life, respected, peaceful, dies in 1902, not knowing that his anger would become a ritual for billions. He thought he silenced one customer, but in reality, he silenced the whole world and made it crunch billions of times a second. Do you know that feeling, when your anger suddenly becomes someone else's delight? Perhaps the greatest inventions aren't born of genius, but of irritation. Perhaps progress isn't just great minds, but also petty grudges, accidental gestures, impulsive decisions. Chips remind us, sometimes one enough is all it takes to change the world. Not loudly, not pompously, just crunchily. And this crunch, the sound of human unpredictability, frozen in time and packaged in a bag. Do you hear it? Even now, even in silence. Crunch is the language the body speaks, a language older than words, older than potatoes, older than America. And now, a question for you. Are chips the result of genius, or just a happy accident? Write in the comments, genius or accident. Your answer: it's not just an opinion. It's a mirror of how you see the world, governed by reason or by chance. And while you decide, crunch again, for the story isn't over. It continues right in your hands. In every slice, a challenge. In every crunch, an echo of a kitchen where revenge became a menu, and where one question, "Can you make them thinner?" changed everything.